Regulation is asking that truck drivers must be proficient in English. At this truck driving school in Linden, New Jersey, students maneuver 18-wheelers around cones while learning English. This training has become essential recently after President Donald Trump issued an executive order saying that truckers who don't speak English sufficiently will be taken out of service. The Department of Transportation released rules impacting interstate truck and bus drivers that will take effect June 25th. The administration says the new rules aim to improve road safety following incidents where a truck driver's inability to read signs or speak English may have contributed to fatal accidents. Truckers around the country, many of whom speak English as a second language, are concerned that they could lose their jobs if they make a mistake or speak with a heavy accent. So they're brushing up on their English skills through classes and practicing what they'll say on roadside inspections. The new rule was designed to improve road safety. However, some fear it could lead to discrimination.
All right, shalom, shalom, shalom. All praises to the Most High, Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, which is to say in the Paleo Hebrew, Yahweh, which is the name of our Heavenly Father, meaning He is, Bahashem, meaning in the name, Yahweh Shai, meaning He is our salvation. And that is who the world ignorantly calls Jesus a so-called black man, who, by the way, only came for the Israelites, which brings us to our topic today, okay? Because there's this new law or executive order that goes into effect starting June the 25th, which is tomorrow, that all commercial drivers must, to a certain extent, speak proficient English, okay? And as you saw from the clip that was just played for you before this article that we're going to read, they state some of the reasons are why. Because the truck drivers can't read the road signs and can contribute to causing fatal car crashes or vehicle crashes, okay? And don't think that it's just going to stop here at the trucking industry. It could hit the lower end or spectrum of the economy, those that have warehouse jobs. Because what do? You operate machinery. And if you can't speak or read English proficiency enough to operate machinery, then you pose threats to who knows who. Okay? So we see in this hammer of the earth flexing its might, all right? From here in Babylon the Great, which is the United States of America, all right? We see the hammer of the earth, and they just did a strike on Iran, naming that strike Operation Hammer, showing you that they are truly indeed, the ones that are in power, all right? And the military, the might of this beast system comes from Washington, D.C. As it says, 3 frogs, all right? That represents what? Uncleanness, all right? The military might is here in the United States of America, particularly the Washington, D.C. The financial is based out of London, and the religion is based out of the Vatican, okay? So we see in the hammer of the earth flexing its power here in America with these executive orders. Now, this one takes place starting tomorrow, June 25th, that you must speak proficient English, all right? Who do you think that's targeting, all right? The Northern Kingdom, all right? The Northern tribes, all right? Because why? Most of them are the ones that do the work that nobody wants to do. All right. And the ones that want to do it, these Americans, these Babylonians, they complain that they taking all the good jobs or taking all the jobs because why? They doing it for way less cheaper. So how is Trump trying to combat that and to capitulate to his constituents? By putting stipulations that what? They have to speak proficient English. So who do you think these Florida Highway Patrol troopers or whatever city or state that you're in, troopers are going to be pulling over? Those that look like they're not supposed to be here in America, all right? And they're going to probably give them a lining of questions, sort of like when you get pulled over and they give you a sobriety field road test where they tell you to put your hands to your side and walk a straight line. Well, they're going to probably have books where you have to read certain sentences and read, and not only read it, but understand it. And if you can't, well, guess what? You lose your license. All right? So that what? These good old boys, these Americans can have some form of, pride that's saying we got a job still. All right? But not knowing that AI is going to take over all of that because they already got self-driving 18-wheelers. Okay? But until that time comes, they're going to give these good old boys the feeling or the illusion that they still have somewhat to hold on here in a fallen society, America. So this is from the article, CDL Life. It says, starting this week, truck drivers can be taken out of service for lack of English language proficiency. All right? How's that for you Northern Kingdoms, that still want to hold the so-called white man in high regards? Okay? He's taking food out of your mouth, man. Here it is, you can be a legal citizen, but if you don't speak proficient English, guess what? You can't operate a commercial vehicle. Okay? So for a lot of you Northern Kingdoms, English is your second language. All right? Although you're a citizen here, you speak Spanish or, Latin or whatever in your home, and English is a second language. Well, guess what? If you don't speak it proficiently and you have a commercial driving license, a CDL, and you get pulled over, maybe it's a state trooper, or maybe it's ICE or DHS, Department of Homeland Security. They now have probable cause to stop and see whether or not you have the right to drive, just based on how you look alone. Okay? Now they may pull over other people that don't look like the Northern Kingdom just so they can say it's not racially, charged. But we know what is coming at, who they coming after, man. Okay? So it says, starting this week, truck drivers can be taken out of service for lack of English language proficiency, which starts tomorrow, June the 25th. It says, this week, commercial vehicle drivers are to be placed out of service for failure to meet English language proficiency, or ELP, standards. Lack of English proficiency is out of service violation again. Effective Wednesday, which is tomorrow, June the 25th, 2025, non-compliance with existing federal regulations requiring ELP for commercial vehicle drivers is an out-of-service violation, according to guidance issued by the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance, CVSA, in May. So now the day has come that these violations will now be into effect if you don't, speak English proficiency. And do you think your company is going to want to pay that violation for you not driving and knowing how to speak English proficiency? No. Because who knows how much the violation is going to be? It could be in the thousands. So a lot of, Northern Kingdom may lose their jobs. All right. Opening up the channel for, the so-called white man to come in and have a job for the time being. It goes on to read, you see the post on X, news has announced new guidelines to enhance enforcement of English proficiency for commercial trucks. It says the CVSA added English proficiency to the agency North American Standard out of service criteria following a White House Executive Order, EO, calling for increased enforcement of federal English language requirements for truck drivers. Okay? So they just added this on to the CVSA English proficiency here in North America, the United States of America. Now, I'm not sure if it's going to affect Canada, but here in America, this is going into effect tomorrow. It says the EO called for agencies to rescind a 2016 Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration FMCSA memo that directed law enforcement not to place truck drivers out of service for ELP. So they rescinded that back in 2016. All right. That's when Trump first came into office, or he was elected the next year to be the president of the United States, the 45th. All right. But now, under his 47th presidency, he's enacting that executive order that what? You must speak English, and not just speak it, but proficiently. All right. So it says, how will officers check for English language proficiency? Let's look up that word proficiency.
Proficiency.
A high degree or competency or skill expertise. So you basically got to speak English as if it's your first language. Okay. That's efficiency. You got to understand English as if it's your first language. All right. So it says, how will officers check for English language proficiency? Let's see. It says starting on June 25th, to avoid being placed out of service, drivers must be able to read and speak English language sufficiently to converse with the general public, to understand highway traffic signs and signals in the English language, to respond to official inquiries, and to make entries on reports and records, officials say. And as I stated earlier, this could just be the beginning. All right, this could be potentially the beginning of you driving a car, not just a commercial driving license, but just your regular driving license. Okay, this could be the beginning of that for you working. All right, because for the longest it's been, you could be bilingual. All right, but now under this new executive order, you have to speak English proficiently. All right, which is sufficient. It says to converse with the general public, to understand highway traffic signs and signals in the English language, to respond to official inquiries, and to make entries on reports and records, officials say. The FMCSA recently issued guidance for law enforcement and safety officers on how to determine whether a commercial vehicle driver is proficient in the English language during the roadside or weigh station inspections. So you see, they can stop you at a roadside or weight inspection. Okay. They can say, well, guess what? We're going to pull open the book, have you read a few pages in English, tell us what you're reading, break it down in detail here at this weigh station. When you go in to weigh your trailer, you can have the ICE agencies or the state troopers or whoever they're going to put in charge to say what? Break down what you're reading. All right. It says what? How many, what is 20,000 pounds? What is that? Tell me how much that is in English. Roughly how much does that weigh? Give me an estimate on an animal. You may say a kangaroo. They like, nope, he don't understand what 20,000 pounds is. He should have said somewhere along the line of a whale, or at bare minimum, an elephant. But you said, a kangaroo. Nope, that's it. That's good enough. It says the policy advises FMCSA personnel to initiate all roadside inspections in English. So they coming up to you speaking English. If you don't respond to them appropriately and you speak your language and you play, I don't know, I don't speak no English that well, I don't understand that well, that's already probable cause, all right, for them to put you out of violation. And if you don't get on board, they may call ICE to see whether or not, hey, we got us one. They're not supposed to be here. Okay. So it says this policy advises FMCSA personnel to initiate all roadside inspections in English if the inspector's initial contact with the driver indicates that the driver may not understand the inspector's initial instructions. So no longer are they going to say you can't play I don't speak no English, because that's going to be a telltale sign that English is not proficient for you. It says the inspector should conduct an ELP assessment in order to evaluate the driver's compliance with 49 CFR 391.11B2. So they're going to pretty much give you a roadside test, like a sobriety test, like when you get pulled over and the officer suspects you of driving under the influence. Well, they're going to give you something similar to that, an assessment for driving under any other language other than English proficiently. All right? So if you get pulled over, if you don't have an Arkansas accent or Georgia accent or any state in America accent that they can recognize, here's the test. Here's the assessment we're going to give on you. Okay? And guess what? If you don't pass it, you in violation. So what's going to happen to that load that you carrying? Well, they're going to have to find somebody else to come pick that up. All right? But if you drive it, you're going to be hit with a hefty fine more than likely. All right? Says step 1, driver interview, determine a driver's ability to respond sufficiently to official inquiries. So you see how stringent these rules are going to go into effect for those that don't speak English proficiently. All right? Highway traffic sign recognition is to give you some of the ways they're going to do it. All right? So there you have it. Okay? This goes into effect tomorrow. All right? June the 25th, 2025. Okay? So, hey, all you quote unquote English speakers that don't speak proficiently, guess what? You gotta get your English up. All right? Because if not, hey, they gonna put you, I ain't gonna say out of commission, but you're gonna have to pay a violation. All right, you're gonna be a violation. I don't know to speak too much on the trucking industry that how many violations can you have before you can no longer drive, but it's gonna impact a lot of Northern Kingdoms that drives livelihood. Okay, so let's get a few precepts and let's take it from there. This is the book of Jeremiah, chapter 50 and verse 33. It reads, "Thus saith Yahweh of hosts, the children of Israel and the children of Judah were oppressed together." Right. So here it is. You seeing the oppression. Okay. And we're going to get by who in a little bit. All right. So for all you that's saying that's not my brother, you being oppressed in the land that is our captivity, man. It says the children of Israel and the children of Judah were oppressed together, and all that took them captives held them fast, and they refused to let them go. Right. They're going to make it hard on you, man. All right. They got you here. You coming in here. It's not good enough that you is a citizen, a legal citizen. If you want to drive and make a living that way because you want to, buy a nice house or whatever, you better be able to speak English proficiently. Okay. You better be able to speak English proficiently. You better, when you get pulled over at an inspection station and we come talking to you in English, you better respond back in English proficiently. If I hint just a smidgen of an accent of another nation or another, tongue or a language, I'm going to give you that assessment test just to see whether or not you speak English proficiently. And if not, you're going to be in violation. And if you work for a truck company, they ain't going to want to take these violations, man. All right, because these violations could be, a hamper on their business. They got to find someone to go get the load. And if you got your own business and you are a quote unquote non-speaking or English proficient speaking, citizen, how many times you going to want to get hit with a violation? All right. You see? So it's going to also encourage those that have their own business that don't speak English to leave that trucking industry if they don't want to become proficient in English. All right. So let's read this one more time. Jeremiah 50:33. Thus saith Yahweh of hosts, the children of Israel and the children of Judah were oppressed together, and all that took them captives held them fast. They refused to let them go. They're not going to let up on you, man. All right, here it is. You done got your citizenship now, the legal way, but you don't speak English. So there's nothing for you to do here. Okay? And like I said, this trucking industry is just the entry to every other industry in America that's going to probably use something along these lines where you have to speak English proficiently. So then what are you going to do? See, they're encouraging you to what? Just stay in your homeland where your language is your proficient language. Because here in America, if you don't speak English proficiently, there ain't going to be no work for you to do. Okay? That's what they're telling you in a nutshell. And they starting with the trucking industry. All right? Who's to say they won't use this for lawn service industry? You know? Because a lot of Ishmaelites, they have their own lawn service and they drive on the highways with, a tractor full of lawn equipment. And if they don't speak English proficiently, well, guess what? How are they going to transport that lawn equipment to the next job site? Or maybe they do roofing, or maybe they do concrete. How are you going to get from one job site to the next if you don't speak English proficiently and they have the right to stop and pull you over to see? Because why? Under the guidelines or banner of road safety, you need to read the traffic signs and know how to operate and do all that without causing a fatal crash. Well, for the longest, you had so many people that don't put their turn signals on, that don't know how to, drive, even if they do get a driving license. But now all of a sudden, now under this second term of Trump administration, now you got to know how to speak English proficiently, because you pose a threat to those that are around you on the highway. Why? Because you got an 18-wheeler that could do way more damage. Imagine if you're doing the speed you doing the speed that you're supposed to in an 18-wheeler, and you got some jackass that's flying down the highway in a new Corvette or something like that doing 130. Who you think gonna do the most damage? That semi that's doing 60 miles per hour, or that damn Corvette that's flying and doing 130? But guess what? They're gonna pull that semi over. Okay? Because why? You got a so-called Mexican driving it. And they're going to let that Corvette fly by because why? You got a good old boy driving, all right? And the officer had to pick between the two, the 130 that's flying in that Corvette, which is American muscle car, or the 60, or the 18-wheeler that's doing 60 miles per hour, but got a Mexican driving it, man. Okay? You see? This gives them the autonomy to what? Pull you over and stop you and just talk to you and see whether or not you speak English. Okay? So the pretext is already being set for everything else that's going to follow this. And it starts tomorrow, June the 25th, 2025. This is Deuteronomy. I said we was going to go to it, who is speaking of. We're going to see 28, and let's start at verse 49, because this is part of being under the curses. This is Deuteronomy 28 and 49. It reads, Yahweh shall bring a nation against thee. So this is Yahweh that's doing this. All right, because why? Of your wickedness. All right, here it is. We telling you day in and day out to what? To repent. All right, and then because you don't really repent and you think you're going to be able to make it, well, guess what? He's saying a fierce nation, okay? And we're going to see what that fierce nation is. It says, verse 49, Deuteronomy 28 and 49, Yahweh shall bring a nation against thee from far, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flieth. Well, we know America has officially made the eagle its what? Its symbol, its emblem, all right? Under Joe Biden presidency, America has the eagle as its official symbol. It says, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. So, of course, English is going to be your second language, all right? And you don't understand it. But guess what? That fierce nation, that nation that's as swift as an eagle, is coming down with these what? With these draconian measures. Speak English proficiently or be risk of getting a violation. So let's read that again from the top. Deuteronomy 28 and 49. Yahweh shall bring a nation against thee from far, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle. We know that's the Edomites, okay? Because they came over here under the guidelines of exploring under so-called, quote-unquote, Christopher Columbus, the New World. They came over here with bad intentions. They knew the Israelites were already over here, particularly the Northern Kingdom, all right? Because they had a Hebrew interpreter that spoke Hebrew, all right? They knew that the Hebrew Israelites were already over here. It says, as swift as the eagle flieth. And now we know through Joe Biden's term that he made the eagle the official symbol of America. It says, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. Right. When the natives encountered the so-called white man, they didn't understand the language that they spoke. And now the so-called white man is telling the natives that's native to this land to speak English proficiently or risk being hit with a violation. The hypocrisy. Verse 50, a nation of fierce countenance, which shall not regard the person of the old, nor show favor to the young. They don't care what you is. If you're an old person and you about to retire, you just trying to make a living, an honest living, and you get caught on the road at an inspection and you can't pass the assessment test, you will be given a violation. Who knows how many violations you get before you are out of commission. It says, nor show favor to the young. They don't care if you just got over here. But I just got over here. I just got over here. I see here my paper. I'm a legal citizen. We don't care if you just got over here. You driving, you need to speak the English language proficiently. Okay? This is what it is. All right? Let's go to Psalms 49 because this is where we at. All right? This is Psalms 49 and verse 11. It says their inward thought is that their houses shall continue forever. See? This is the pride and arrogance. All right? Of who? Esau, Edom, the so-called Edomites. Obadiah 1 tells us that. The pride and arrogance, man. Speak my language or be hit with a violation. You go to Mexico, do they tell you to speak? Do they tell you you need to speak Spanish to drive? But see, here in America, it's totally different because why? This is that fierce nation. This is Obadiah 1 and verse 3. The pride of thy heart. Is this the verse? Obadiah 1. Obadiah 1 and 3. This is speaking about the Edomites. Obadiah 1 and 3, it says, the pride of thy heart hath deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high, that saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? Though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, we just read that in Deuteronomy 28, the 49th and 50th verse. Though thou exalt thyself as an eagle, what's the symbol of America officially now? The eagle, It says, and though thou set thy nest among the stars, setting their satellites up in space, this will I bring thee down, saith Yahweh. See? So Yahweh's going to bring this powerful man down, because here it is. This man that once was a guest to this land has now claimed this land as his own. And in doing so, you that once was the owner of this land must now speak his language, as you are now the guest in his house. That's the pride of this man. He came in crouching as a tiger, as it says in Ecclesiasticus 12 and verse 10, never trust thy enemy. And it goes on to read, though he come crouching as a tiger, be very aware of him. Roughly paraphrasing. But he came in humble, not knowing how to till the ground, not knowing how to do anything. And the natives were the so-called Native Americans, because we know their name according to the Holy Bible, Gad, Reuben. The natives that were here show him how to get through his first winter. And in return, what does he do? He gives them a blanket full of smallpox. All right? And now what does he do? He says, if you don't speak the English language proficiently, you are now what? Forced to be hit with a violation. The audacity. All right? What happened to the gratitude? Okay? No, it's just the pride of this man. Okay? It's just the pride. And the Bible exposes him. So now back to Psalms 49 in verse 11, where it says, they name, let's read that. Psalms 49:11. Their inward thought is that their houses shall continue forever, and their dwelling places to all generations. They call their lands after their own names. Now you have to speak English. English is a language associated with America. America is now the name of this place that we live in. Okay? When it was called Artaxerxes in the Bible, if I'm not mistaken. All right? This is the land where no man dwelt before. Meaning what? That although people knew about this place, nobody dwelt here, meaning lived here. Okay? And to the Native Americans, the so-called Native Americans, the Northern Kingdom came over here and dwelt. Okay? So it says their inward thoughts, or the inward thought is that their houses shall continue forever, in their dwelling places to all generations. So here it is, in this generation, they telling you what? You Northern Kingdoms, that, you must speak the English language proficiently. This is our land now. This land is your land. This land is my land. You know the song, man. From sea to shining. It'll be, they might even ask, they might pull you over and ask you to recite the national anthem or the Pledge of Allegiance, man. Who knows what these devils might have you do in the assessment test? Can you recite the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Who knows, man, what they might have you do? Or can you recite the national anthem? See, they gonna make it very difficult for you to keep your CDL and make an honest living over here, because they want crime to come, man. All right, they want to put the Northern Kingdom under a certain spotlight as just what, gang affiliated, like Trin Aragua or whatever that was. See, they lumping Northern Kingdom and Southern Kingdom together, man. Okay, and painting this broad picture, of the Northern Kingdom being illegal immigrants just coming over here stealing jobs, and the Southern Kingdom being lazy, making our beautiful country, pretty much ugly from all this, poverty-stricken communities and stuff like that. Meanwhile, they this bright and shining, night that got this land by deceit, man. You see? And now they telling you speak English proficiently. All right? And it's starting with the roads, okay? It's starting on the road with the CDL, and it's gonna end up in the factories. It's gonna end up in the grocery stores. It's gonna end up everywhere, man. All right? So get ready, man. All right? We've been telling you that this devil is coming down with what? Great wrath. Because why? He knows he has but a short time. This is Revelation 13 in verse 11. It reads, "And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb." And this is speaking of America, okay? Because America is Rome all over again. And it says, he came up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon, right? Because with his democracy, his Republican, his Democrat, is a symbol after the Roman Empire. They had two parties, okay? So they give you the illusion on the democracy that, you know, this place is for you, all right? If you will all do but what's required and ask for you. But in actuality, it spake as a dragon. When you go into that word dragon, it's dracon, all right? And that's where you get draconian from, all right? Because why? They hit you with all these draconian, all these hard, you know, laws and measures and executive orders. And now you got to speak English proficiently. It ain't well enough that you can, you know, somehow get over and speak English. You got to speak it proficiently now in order to have a CDL, a commercial driving license. All right. So, hey, he tells you come in America and you know, make your dream happen. But when you come over here, you got to do what's required of you. You got to speak English proficiently. All right. We don't need drivers that bad when we want to have those that don't speak English proficiently. It's not good enough that you can speak English, but you have to speak it proficiently, as if it's pretty much your first language. All right? Their thoughts is that their houses should go on forever, man. Speak my language, or what? Get out of my house. All right? That you stole. Ain't that a damn bitch, man? Here it is, Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, came into your house, stole it, and now telling you, in order for you to come back, you got to speak his language. Damn. So it says, "And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon." All right? These laws, these executive orders, that's him speaking as a dragon. All right? Get hit with a violation. All right. Matter of fact, while we at it, let's send a couple of ICE agents over there to see if they really supposed to be here. Okay. So now you risk the you know, chance of you running the gauntlet of getting pulled over by ICE and getting deported, man. All right. So hey, either you get on board with the program or get left behind, man. All right. And we know they starting with the Northern Kingdom, but they coming for Judah too, man. All right. So you've been warned. Okay. You've been warned. You get caught out there and you got a CDL and, you know, you got it, you know, but now it ain't good enough that you got it. Never mind, you got the commercial driver license. Never mind that. Now you have to speak English proficiently. So it wasn't good enough that you got the commercial. How did you get the commercial driver license in the first place is the question. But now you got to speak English proficiently alongside with that commercial driving license. And if you have a passenger, they may require that passenger to speak English proficiently in case they like a backup driver when you get tired. You see? So this devil, man, he's coming down with what? Great wrath. Because why? He knows he has but a short time. Revelation 12:12. It says what? Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea. Why? For the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath. Why? Because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. So he's going to make it very difficult. As his kingdom slips from up out of his hands, he's going to make it as difficult as possible until it's inevitable that the mark of the beast is the microchip. Okay? So, hey, you've been warned. Starting tomorrow, June 25th, 2025, if you don't speak English proficiently and you get pulled over, you risk the chance of getting a violation. Take it as you will. All right? This is 1 Peter 5 and verse 8. It reads what? Be sober. What else? Be vigilant. Why? Because your adversary, the devil, we just read about him in Revelation 12 and 12, as a roaring lion, walketh about. Not running, but walketh, because he's doing his due diligence. If you run, you may skip over some, but if you walk, you making sure all your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed. It says, seeking whom he may devour. Right. So what's one of the highest paid jobs that you don't really need a high school diploma or GED? You can get is what? Your CDL. Okay. But now you got to be able to read what? And speak English proficiently. See? So what are you going to do? Go back and get educated? Take your English class? A Rosetta? Come on, man. Woo! You going to what? Go and get you some Rosetta tapes and learn how to speak English? Apple. Orange. This is what you gonna speak to the rose. you gonna carry a conversation on like that with them? A Rosetta conversation? This is my book. I am Pablo. You gonna have a conversation with this damn roadside assessment officer speaking like a Rosetta tape? They gonna know you don't speak English proficiently, man. In order for you to speak English proficiently, you basically got to be raised and born here in America. Okay? That's something you just learn over time. That's not something you could just pick up from being here a day or two or a year. You got to be here over a time, a period, man, to learn the lingo, to learn the language, to speak it proficiently. Okay? And they counting on that for the most part. They done did their research because Esau Edom is a cunning hunter. He got analytics and statistics that show that, hey, this is the perfect time, man, all right, to make that move along with ICE. Because why? We got the statistics, the stats that the drivers that's driving these trucks haven't been here in America long enough to what? Speak English proficiently. So now let's put this into executive order and let's have a justifiable reason of going out and stopping and rounding up these quote unquote illegal immigrants. Because if you speak proficient English, but you don't look the part and you ain't got your paperwork on it, well, guess what? They can call ICE out to check and see. But I thought you said I just needed to speak proficient English. Yeah, we said that, but now we got other probable cause to think that you might not be a citizen here. Because since you've been here so long and you speak English proficiently, but you don't look the part, we just want to double check and make sure you got your paperwork. You see? So they're going to use this executive order on many different, ways, all right, to deport and hit people with violations that they don't see fit to be here, okay? So you need to be what? You need to be sober. You need to be vigilant, all right? Understanding that these are the last days, the last times that this man is going to be in rulership. And he's going out with a bang, man, all right? We tell you to what? To repent, okay? See, if the Lord is with you, then who can be against you, man? All right? To know what this devil is coming in and getting ready to do, it's going to give you what? A heads up, all right? To what? Know how to move accordingly. So it says what? Be sober, be vigilant. Why? Because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, not running, but walketh about, seeking whom he may devour. So pretty much he's coming for the northern kingdom right now. But eventually he's going to come from all of Israel, the northern and the southern kingdom. All right? Because why? He's got to come down with that great wrath. He's being exposed. He's being, aired out. So he got to get ready to come down with that great wrath, man. All right, which is why things are moving the way they're moving. All right, but you've been warned. Get your body right, get your mind right, get your temple right. All right, repent while there's still time. All right, you ain't gonna have the servants, the prophets, to be out here telling you what to do all the time. All right, eventually they're gonna shut this down, man. All right, and in that time it's gonna be too what? It's gonna be too late for you to repent. Because why? You ain't gonna have the warning from the servants, the prophets, to tell you these things. Okay. So we're going to conclude with that. And with that being said, pray someone was edified through this lesson. And until the next time, if it be the Lord's will, stay strong, stay in the faith. We almost home. Shalom. Peace.